welcome everybody to No Lake County. Do we have any people who haven't been to No Lake County before? That's good. Welcome. Well, No Lake County is a program we've been doing since 2015, and it's anything to do with Lake County that's interesting. We've had history talks, archaeology, science. We've had programs about agriculture and businesses, the visual arts, the performing arts. Our program next month will be about the Lake County Probation Department, and in September it will be about the Upper Lake Women's Protective Club, the Upper Lake Library, and the Hammond family, and all that interesting history. I want to thank you for coming, and we also want to thank the Friends of the Lake County Library who supply the refreshments for these programs. And we also thank them for their contributions to our book budget. Without them, we wouldn't have as many good books as we do. My name's Jan. I've worked for the library for 29 years. A little bit of library news. Next week, the Adult Literacy Program is having a training for new tutors. If anybody's interested in that, we can give you the information. And our summer reading program for this year is coming to the end. We have a week to go. We've had greater sign-ups than we expected, so we have hundreds of people signed up from kids to grandparents, and the prizes will be awarded in August. We have library handouts and Friends of the Library handouts over here on the table. If you want to sign up to get our weekly news updates, we have flyers for that. And I want to welcome our speaker, Bernie Butcher. He'll be talking about the Tallman Hotel in Upper Lake, which he and his wife Lynn took from a derelict property into a showplace. And I do remember Upper Lake before the Butchers got to it. I'm really happy to see what it's turned into. Bernie has degrees in history and international banking. He's worked as a banker and as a history teacher and as a basketball coach before he took on becoming an innkeeper. And we are delighted to have him. So,
thank you.
You're on.
I'm glad this is called KNOW, Lake County, not NO. Restart computer. Do I need to do that? So this PowerPoint presentation I put together, well, I did talk once at the Thanksgiving presentation of the Lake County Historical Association, but most of the time, twice a year at the hotel, we host a group from Rhodes Scholar, you know, that used to be elder hostel education programs for people over 55 and all that. And it's called the North of Napa Wine Country the Way It Used to Be. So people are coming from all over the country to spend a week here learning about the up-and-coming wine industry in Lake County. But they all get off the plane from South Carolina or wherever, and they don't know what time zone there is, and they're in this rural area. Where the hell are we? And this and that. So I have to sort of place them in the universe, so to speak. This is where you'll be for the next week. So the first couple of slides on this will be familiar to you, so I'll slide right through them. But this is basically I start on 400,000 years back. If we say that that Clear Lake is the oldest lake in Lake County, well, what does that mean? How has it evolved over time? And I think this is kind of interesting. You all know the history, the theory that, I mean, this is where we are now, and this is like 400,000 years ago when the Clear Lake Basin drained to the northeast as the headwaters of the Russian River, and then gradually over time spread out to the Big Valley area, Kelseyville and all that. That's why the land in Kelseyville area is so agriculturally rich, because it's sedimentary. And then just as you're coming in from Ukiah on 20, you go up over this hill before you go down to Blue Lakes. So this is all a big lava flow. that the theory is, 10,000 years or so ago, a big lava flow blocked off the exit and forced the buildup and forced the lake to go south. This would be southwest, out Ketch Creek. So, and then this is today. So I think that's kind of interesting to start them out. Then because they're interested in wine, I show them the AVAs in Lake County. I think Big Valley has now been approved as an AVA, and we have an application in for Upper Lake AVA. And then this is just an aerial view, also showing the AVA with the Big Valley, the Kelsey Bench just off the old lake bed, and the Red Hills, and then the High Valley AVA. And then some of them have heard, though you can't swim in Clear Lake, it's just all so dirty and full of algae and this and that. So I tell them I go swimming every day, but this is something that appeared, I think, in the paper a while back about the areas of agricultural runoff that are actually sort of feeding the lake with nutrients that contribute to algae blooms. It's been pretty good this year, actually. But you can see the main inflow area from Middle Creek, and then the various creeks leading into Clear Lake from this direction are mostly the agricultural, and then down here, the blue is cleaner water, although a lot of the algae bloom blows down this way.
It's deeper down that way too, isn't it?
Yeah, it is interesting that if this is the biggest lake all in California, as we like to advertise, certainly by volume it's not that much, because the deepest in this big part of the lake is, according to my map, 24 feet. And the deepest down here is like 60 feet.
What does TPW mean? TPW, parts per billion.
Parts per billion. That must be Latin for parts per billion. So then I try and, I'm narrowing them down from 500,000 years ago to the present. So where are they now? They're in the town of Upper Lake, and so you say, well, why was there a town there? What was the economic justification? So you see this is 20 in from Ukiah, 29 down here, and so you see this is Rodman Slough, and going up Middle Creek, pretty good agriculture potential at Middle Creek, and the Mendocino National Forest, lots of lumber. There were lumber mills, sawmills, so there was agricultural potential, but the tourist potential at the end of in the 1800s was substantial. Why? Because this road that you see going on down to Sacramento was not completed until 1931. It was the Fort Bragg to Tahoe Highway. But so the road in from Ukiah stopped here. And if you wanted to go to Bartlett Springs or Huff Springs or whatever, you transferred from the stage to a rough wagon that took you up Clover Valley Road to Bartlett Springs, and it'd take you a day to get to Bartlett Springs and another day to get over to Sacramento. So this was kind of, and the big draw to Lake County at the turn of the century wasn't the lake, it was the hot springs. And so you had a lot of hardware stores and other stores here to service the agriculture, but you also had a tourist requirement for a place to stable horses and put up people as they transferred to the hot springs. And the hot springs were something, if you can judge by this shot of Bartlett Springs at the turn of the century. And, you can just picture people coming. If it takes a day to get here and another day to get up there, people are coming up for the summer with their steamer trunks and their fancy clothes, and the women and kids are staying for the summer, and the guy working in the city comes up 2 or 3 times. So look at the size of these buildings, and here's the dining room. We don't have a dining room like that in Lake County today. Just picture those. I mean, this looks like the Ahwahnee Lodge in Yosemite, doesn't it? You can just picture ladies in their white dresses, guys putting on ties for dinner. We have people in this county that don't own a tie. I can't remember how to tie. So this is just an example of what those hot springs looked like at the turn of the century. And then the other economic uses, this is one of the 12 sawmills that were not far from Upper Lake. And if you've been into our restaurant, the Blue Wing, you'll see the wainscoting on the side, on the walls, is all, you can see the mill marks on that old growth redwood that comes from one of these mills and was found under layers of paint and wallpaper in the upstairs of the hotel. We took that down, cleaned it up, and used that as the wainscoting in the restaurant. So this is the town of Upper Lake about the turn of the 20th century. You can see since that picture was taken, Main Street's been paved. A few other upgrades, but not that many. So you see, I'll tell you about this. Here's the hotel. Here it's listed as Rife's Hotel, and I'll tell you why. The original name was Tallman Hotel, built by Rufus Tallman, and one of his daughters, Winnie, inherited it and married a apparently sort of ne'er-do-well pool hall owner down the street named Hank Rife, and she worked in it for 50 years. He never worked in it, but he got his name on it. This was when men still had their prerogatives, you know. This building is still there. This is an antique store. And then I didn't know you were going to have a presentation on this, but since we're at the library, I threw this in, and I'll give you just a little preview of what, and I guess 2 or 3 months you'll have a talk on this. So this is the, you can see the workmen are still finished while the ladies of the Upper Lake Ladies Protective Club are preparing to open the library in 1916. And it's really a great story. Come and hear more authoritative version. But it all started with Charles Mifflin Hammond, who was a classmate at Harvard of Teddy Roosevelt in 1883. And after he graduated from Harvard, for some reason he got interested in viticulture. And he came out to the Napa Valley for a year to learn the business. And then he and his brother bought 1,200 acres in Upper Lake, and started the first vineyard and winery in Lake County called the Motel. And I don't know where that name comes from, the Motel Winery. And I don't know where the vineyard was, but his house, Lynn and I went to check it out, his house is still there on Red Hill Road overlooking, on the right-hand side of Highway 20, overlooking Rodman Slough. Anyway, he married in about 5 years later. He must have been good friends with Roosevelt because he married Roosevelt's first wife, Alice's sister, Harriet Lee. And so this is 1888, and they were living there, and he was quite a guy. If you, some of this was noted at the 100th anniversary 2 years ago of the library. He was a big promoter of cricket in Lake County. He had cricket teams from all of the various areas. He he was big in trying to get the railroad into Lake County, which never happened. He was also big in trying to, he was a big opponent of this water sale that we still live with to Yolo County. And he really pushed the wines. He took his wines to the 1893 Columbia Exposition in Chicago, won some prizes there, and a similar exposition in Paris in 1900. And apparently, at that exposition, just think, there were only 3 wineries represented from north of the Golden Gate. Italian-Swiss Colony, one other from Napa, and Motel from Upper Lake at the Paris Exposition in 1900. So he was quite a guy. His other big community cause was to build the first high school in Lake County, which turned out to be Clear Lake High School. And he gave the commencement address in June of 1915. He sat down after the address. They played as the students are walking out, and then he keeled over and died. This is June of 1915. So Harriet's still here. And then 3 months later in September, there's a fire in Upper Lake, and the building at 2nd and Main burned down, owned by Mendenhall, who gave the land to the Ladies Protective Club that had started a little book club the year before. She gave the land, and Harriet then said she put up the money for designing and building the building, so that's why it's named after her. And then she got on a train and went back to Harvard and recruited a guy named Alexander Longfellow to do the design work, and he was a nephew of the poet Longfellow. He had done various buildings at Harvard, so he actually designed this, and then it was commissioned and opened in 1916. She gradually filtered back east and didn't spend much more time out in Upper Lake. The library did very well, was eventually absorbed into the library system in the 70s. People know when that was. Apparently there was a financial crisis where they were thinking of closing it in 2013, but the Protective Club stirred things up and wouldn't let that happen. They're very proud of that. We had an ice cream social at our place, a fundraiser last weekend, and they were the ladies all remembered how they defeated the effort to close it, and now they have a lot of computers, kids use it quite a bit. Anyway, that's the library story. So if you just back to the history of the hotel, this is the family that built the hotel. So this is Rufus Tallman, who came as a teenager, came around the Horn from Missouri, and at the end of the gold rush in the 1850s, he married a 19-year-old from Scotts Valley named Mary Moore. And Mary Moore, glad this doesn't happen as much anymore as it did, had 13 children between the age of 19 and 46. So I'm noticing a few groans from the audience. So this is the oldest and this is the youngest of her kids. Isn't that something? And so then this is Winnie over here, who eventually inherited the hotel, married Hank Rife, and worked there till 1947. So I do have what I think is kind of an interesting story, quickly, about Mary Moore Tallman. So she grew up with a family in Scotts Valley, a homesteader family, okay? And she married him when she was 19, and she had a lot of younger siblings. And I knew that in researching this, I knew that in 1866, all of her family except her, because she was the oldest and married, packed up, got on a boat with a group of others from Sonoma Valley, went down to Valparaiso, Chile, crossed over the Andes, went to Buenos Aires, went up the Paraná River, and helped found a town there called Colonia, California. So I had spent some time down there, and I knew that at that time, Argentina, underpopulated, Indian problem, looking to European settlement, providing inducements, because there was a Colonia Britannica, Colonia Suisse, this and that, they're trying to encourage. So I could see that. But why would a family pack up that had free land, right, in their own country, away from any problems? Why would they pack up and go on this wild adventure?
Well, politics.
Very good.
Civil War.
Even better. So here I am about 6, 7, 8 years ago, and I get an email from an attorney in Buenos Aires by the name of Javier Mafucci Moore. Javier Mafucci Moore. And he said, Mr. Butcher, is this the same Tallman Hotel, the same Tallman, Rufus Tallman, Mary? Is this the same one? I said, yeah. He says, well, my spare time, I've done a lot of research on Colonia, California, and really glad to make your acquaintance. And he sends me these 20, 30-page tracts he's done to Argentine Historical Association stuff, all in Spanish about the background, this and that. Very interesting. So I posed the question to him. I could understand why Argentina wanted them, but why did they want to go? And he had exactly your answer. They were Southern sympathizers. The war didn't go the way they wanted it to go, and they didn't want to be in any country run by this guy Lincoln, or Lincoln's successor. So they took off, and that was the basic reason. And isn't it interesting how historical events, you think, okay, history doesn't involve us, right? But history, that one thing that happened 3,000, 2,000 miles away, split this family basically forever. She probably never saw her siblings again. And so this is the interesting part. So this picture of Mary's family is about 1895. He sends me a picture of her brother and his family at the same time. Isn't that something? Family apart, and they're all, Spanish names and totally integrated into Argentine culture. So this is her brother at the same time.
How many kids?
Well,
They're prolific, He had 13, so it must have been in the water.
she looked like she might have some Spanish in her, though.
Could have been.
Yeah.
But I got no sense that they knew that they went there for that reason or knew any Spanish when they got there. So that's an interesting story. So basically, this is the way, a drawing of the way this complex looked in the 1890s. The hotel is different than it is today because this hotel burned down. I think it was probably a bigger, nicer hotel than the one we inherited. Burned down in 1895. There was a depression in the country in the 1890s, and so they rebuilt it, and they didn't have insurance. They rebuilt it cheaply, and that's the one we inherited. We're at the garden that's there today, the saloon, and the livery stable. So this was all in one for travelers. The livery stable, this is the way it was when, and you probably remember it that way, teaching in Timber Lake. So it had gone through a variety of uses. It was a used car thing, a gas station. You see they cut off here and they made a gas pump. And this is the way it was when it was purchased by Sheldon Steinberg about 20 years ago, I guess now. And he put a lot of effort. It looks like just a rundown building, but he put a lot of effort and money into fixing it up as it was, exactly as a livery stable. And he, for many years, had his antique plumbing business, antique plumbing fixture business in there. You may have remembered wandering through, really tremendous. It's too bad he's moved he's in Sebastopol now, still owns the building, and it's for sale if you'd like to buy it. But all of the plumbing fixtures, all the plumbing fixtures in the 4 rooms upstairs in the hotel are all from him. You know, usually if you're building a hotel or something, you have a size of your bathroom, right? And then you go looking for fixtures that fit into that, right? But in this case, we bought the fixtures, all different sizes, a huge tub, a thin tub, a wide rack, this and that. We bought all the fixtures, different sizes, and then had the architect design the bathrooms to fit the fixtures. Yeah. Glad we thought of it first. And then this was the saloon. The saloon was torn down in the 20s during Prohibition. And this and a few other photos are all we had to go by when we reconstructed the saloon to look as much as possible. Inside, we didn't know what it looked like inside, so we made it look like this. And this is the old-growth redwood wainscoting that I mentioned. And then the bar top is a black walnut tree that we took down in the front of we had to take down, and we milled it, and then and then this is the hotel about 1900. This would be Mary Moore. You can see it says Tallman Hotel. Upper Lake is very flat, doesn't drain well, and used to flood quite regularly in the wintertime until the levees went up in the late 50s and early 60s. In fact, a lot of the buildings are so high, they say that people, the storekeepers would keep their inventory 2 feet up and keep a little boat off the back. And then this would be about the 1920s, Model Ts. And the town burned again in 1924. For better or for worse, the fire didn't get to our place. Would have saved us a lot of hassle if it had, but it didn't. So as you go down Main Street, and you see on the left with all those, wood-covered walkway and everything, all those buildings date from the late 20s after this fire. And then the Tallman was vacant and for sale for 41 years when we came across it in August of 2003. So this is the for sale sign that was rusting out after. If we hadn't bought it, they would have at least had to get a new sign. And then this is me. And here, I shouldn't say this because my wife is here, but this is me wondering what the hell my wife got me into. She did not say that. She did have the initiative, although I like the idea of preserving a history. But it looks like it may be occupied, right? Look at this.
Yeah.
People got so tired of this empty building that they came in with cans of gray and black paint and painted curtains on the windows. So that's You know, there must, in those 41 years, there must have been 300 people that looked at it and said, not for me. So this is an example of the greater fool theory. If you wait long enough, the greater fool will come along. So here's another view of it. And then slight transformation. And then inside, you can see the paint. But, you know, the building in 1896 was built really cheaply. But just think of the craftsmanship that was available cheaply in those days. This door is mortar and tenon, no glue, no nails, everything fits together perfectly. The two doors like this, it took one of our guys a full month to take them all apart, clean them up, and put them up back exactly the way they were. And just think, you know, today you could slam something like that together in a couple of hours. So we preserved as much as we could there, obviously. And then the dining room. And then here's what we inherited in the living room. The little stove and a non-load-bearing wall here that we took down to open it up. But this is the same stairwell. And as you're going up this stairwell, the dust is coming up like this. But it, you know, it was mostly redwood, so it was in fairly decent shape, not much mold. But what we, you know, we took all of this carpeting obviously out and took the runners out to clean everything up. And the contractor was pretty cool. He kept all the square-headed nails in removing the runners and reapplied the same nails when they redid this. So if you walk up the stairs now, you can look down and see the original nails. And then this is what it looked like upstairs. Layers of paint and wallpaper all over this beautiful old growth redwood that they didn't even know was there. But it was basically eight little rooms, 4 on each side, with bath down the hall. And it was built so cheaply that it was only finished on one side of the 2x4s. Oh, wow. So if you're in room A next to room B, you're separated by a piece of wood this thick with a lot of squeaky springs and this and that. They only finished it on one side. And you didn't need to cover up the wiring and plumbing and everything because there wasn't any wiring. So I think we would have had a better luck getting on the National Register of Historic Places if we'd fixed up the 8 rooms with bath down the hall, but I didn't think we'd get too many customers. So it's now 4 rooms, 2 on each side. And we kind of, here is one of the rooms, if you haven't been there. And then these are the antique bathroom fixtures in those 4 old rooms. They're really quite cool. So Lynn and I lived in Asia for a while, and we remember how the Japanese love to take their vacations at places with baths and ryokans where you sleep on a small room with a mat, but the feature is the bathroom where you've got a big hot tub and you clean yourself with a shower before you get in, and then you just soak. So we found a place in the East Bay that makes those what you call Japanese Ofuro tubs. And in the 4 rooms downstairs, we put these tubs in, and people really enjoy them. I put this shot in because it appeared, I think, 2007 in an article about us in Sunset Magazine. And I remember the day they took that shot, the camera crew comes up, and it's an August day, and it's about 102. And the water's about 102. And they spot this with the prettiest server we have. And they say, would you like to be in Sunset Magazine? Oh, yeah. Well, go home, get your bathing suit. So she runs home, gets her bathing suit. And if you've ever been in one of these photo sessions, they put you in there, and they're fiddling around with the umbrellas, and they're fiddling around with the focus, and then this and that. She's getting redder. She's redder.
Really?
And then they're finally ready, and then they say, sit back and look like you're having a good time. So she did a pretty good job of it, but when she got out, she's in there sitting in a bar having 2 or 3 beers. She says, I'm going to sue these people if I don't get that. Here's the swimming pool. And then we have this building here. The idea, if you've been there, the idea that next to the hotel going towards 2nd Street, there were 2 old houses that were owned by the same person we bought the other buildings from, and they had to be torn down. The one that was here, the owner never did anything, so there was a fire in it, and the county says, well, you gotta fix it up. So she painted the front, but the back was all burned out, fire. So the idea of the buildings that are on this side is that we would make new buildings, but they sort of look like the houses that they replace. So it doesn't look institutional. It looked like we converted existing houses into hotel use, even though they're new buildings. And then this one is our conference room, which we do community groups, and people use it, and we use it for concert series. This is our concert with conversation series that we do once a month, every winter and spring. Some of the people that I show this presentation to are a little bit technical, so I'll go through a couple here, but it's an old building, but we want to be green and do things the right way. So this is solar panels on the saloon, and then we have a pretty unique heating and cooling system called GeoExchange, not geothermal, but GeoExchange. And it's a little bit technical, but it required us to, before we built the buildings, this is where the restaurant is now, but over here where the parking lot, we have a total of 43 300-foot wells and an interconnected system that pumps water through those wells, such that no matter what temperature the water goes into that closed loop system, it always comes up at the temperature of the ground, which is 55 degrees. And then you can run it through fairly standard air-to-water heat exchangers to cool the air, and water-to-water heat exchangers to help heat your hot water system. That's as quickly as I can explain it, but if you want to know more, this is a diagram of how it works. This is a map of the property, the pool, the parking lot, that shows where all the wells are and how they're interconnected. And then this is a picture of the pump that's pumping water through that whole system. And this is a picture of the units, very quiet air conditioning units, make no noise. That takes the water in at 55 degrees, the air in at 90 degrees, warming up the water going out and cooling down the air going out. Very, very quiet, no compressor, and so and then I think we were the first in Lake County to put in electric car charger, and now we have 2 chargers, one for most cars and one for Tesla. Tesla has their own separate. So if somebody comes in for lunch in an electric car, I tell them, we will charge you twice. So after the town was pretty beat up. It had telephone poles and everything all over there. So after we got, the county came along with the redevelopment, and redevelopment is now over, but really was a success in the North Shore. Those of you that live in Lucerne and Nice and the Oaks, Upper Lake, it was quite a success in terms of sprucing up the town. So they undergrounded all the utilities, put these nice things in, bulb outs for vegetation, new sidewalks, and new pavement. So, and this is our town grocer, Pat Murphy, putting up the arch. Pretty strong guy, no? Yeah. And then this is the old Bank of Clear Lake, Bank of Upper Lake, Women's Protective Club. And so we actually purchased this building, fixed it up, and this is a new town clock. They raised money for the town clock to replace this, and then we put in the Upper Lake Mercantile that's here now, and our laundry for the hotel is in the back part of this building. So the Mercantile is here, and I think it's doing quite well now. So just a couple more on the hotel. When the hotel was built with no foundation. It was built on field stone and cement blocks. So we had to dig out to put a foundation. We had to, his little guys had to get down there and hike and dig it out so we could jack it up and set it down on a new foundation. You can see we had stripped everything, taken all the verandas and everything off because they were rotted out. And here's a guy named, from Kelseyville, some of you may know him, named Bottle Bob Holt. So Bottle Bob knew the value of old bottles and things, so he comes up to us and says, after work, do you mind if I come around and snoop around and get some bottles? I'll share them with you and this and that. We'll make a lot of money. So here he is snooping around. And here are some of the bottles that he found. So I said, how are you going to find in this? How do you find it? Well, I go to the county, and if you all the maps from 1890 to 1910, all the maps, each 10 years, they would do a map of each property. Well, they have those plat maps now. But the maps in 1890 and 1900 had outlines of all the buildings that were on each property. And what's he looking for? Outhouses. He is trying to find where the outhouses are. Why outhouses? Well, you're at a hotel or whatever, you're drinking too much in your room. The wife says, get the hell out until you stop drinking. So you go sit in the outhouse and you drop the bottle down. And you go back. And so he's drilling down to find where all it is. And he found most of them in old outhouses.
Did you get the fortune?
Yeah.
What was it? He wanted.
We have a ton of bottles in boxes in the attic.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have told us that.
I think he said, well, I'll sell them and we'll split and this and that. And we said, no, we'll just pay you for your time and you can have a few of the bottles, but we'll pay you for your time and we'll keep the bottles. So some of the bottles are in our back bar and others are around. We found a few other things, like an old 6-shooter, a few other things. this is Lynn, and then these are our design team that helped us with the design from San Francisco, Kendra Scott and Richard Anderson. You can see that Kendra didn't dress down when coming in. She's quite a character, and we really have gotten on really great with them, and they come up periodically to make sure we're not messing up their handwork. And so then this is the construction team that was here for 2 years, and they're standing on, and we also, they got paid every 2 weeks, I remember that. But they're standing on the log of this black walnut tree. You know, most of the walnut trees in Lake County are black walnut rootstock with other better fruit grafted on the top. But this one must have been a sucker because it came up right along the street and had never been grafted. So that's why you get 25 feet of pure black walnut for the bar. Came out pretty nice. So this is the portable sawmill that they brought in. We cut it into 25-foot lengths. We were going to use it, and it's also used for our reception desk. We were going to use it, this is October, and there's a lot of water in wood, as you know, and you have to dry the wood. It's like, here it's like 70% water, and we had to get it down to 20%. Well, how are you going to do that in the winter when it's raining? So they brought in a big army tent, and we ran dehumidifiers and heaters in there all winter and sucked the water out. At the end of it, there was the tent just dropped down with this. But we dropped the water down to acceptable level, and were able to put it in. And then a lot of you may know, this was Andy Peterson, who was a county redevelopment guy that helped us along the way with the various county officials, and Andy wanted to be the first person to check into the hotel. So this is December 15th, 2005. Andy checks into the hotel. And then finally, this is the grand opening. We're supposedly celebrating here. This is Lynn cutting the ribbon. All the politicians getting their face in. He was supervisor at the time.
Lewis, yeah.
Gary Lewis. This is Matt Hughes, who's now the winemaker at Brassfield. So here, this is the guest of honor at our grand opening. This is Lillian Tallman at Kissian, the last surviving granddaughter of the original Tallmans in that picture. So you remember the youngest little kid on the lap? So he was the youngest kid, born in like 1896, and she was his youngest kid.
Oh my goodness.
So so this is 2005. A woman is there 2005 whose grandfather was born in 1839. Pretty amazing. So she's a great character. She she passed away, but she lived in Ukiah. So how did she hear about this? So I'm sitting at my desk and I get a call one day. It says, "Are you Mr. Butcher? Are you the guy that you and your wife, the ones that are redoing the Tallman Hotel in Upper Lake?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "How did you hear about it?" "Well, somebody had sent her a copy of over in Ukiah, up to the Lake County Record Bee." So she goes in. Not a copy. There's something in the paper today about the butchers doing this and that. So she goes into the Ukiah Journal office, tries to get a copy of it, looks it up. All it said was, "Lynn and Bernie Butcher from San Francisco are doing this." So she doesn't just stop there. she goes to the phone book or calls information or whatever you did then, and there's only one Bernard Butcher in San Francisco, so she assumes it's me. Yes. And she really tracked us down. And so then we stopped and we chatted with her and became good friends. And she showed up at the opening with a picture of herself playing where our little fountain is now in the garden as a little girl. And so she was with a walker, but when she wanted to get into this picture, she just threw the walker away. And afterwards, it's a hot day, and she's sitting around having a Coke, and I sit down and thank her very much. She says, "Barney, you know, they say everybody has their 15 minutes of fame, and I think I just had mine." Yeah, she was great. She would come every couple of months to have lunch at the Blue Wing, and we had a little memorial service for her there about 5 years ago. So then just one other quick thing to finish. This is a painting. There's a watercolor artist that used to have a shop down the street named J.P. Sarland. And he came before we came, and he took him a couple of days. He sat in front of the old building and he did this watercolor. And this is a photograph that we had that I ran through a computer program and created this in 2 minutes.
Oh, I wish you hadn't told us that.
Well, but if you'd like, I could sell these to you. Limited prints, would you like that? So that's that. I did. This is where my I had a little 30-second advertisement that is on my other computer, so we can't show it today. But there's a 30-second advertisement that we did where we're saying, "Come on to the Blue Wing, have a good time," and then it pans around and it shows all these happy people having this, drinking and having steaks and this and that, and looking at everything's great, and then come to the Blue Wing. So I then tell the story about why everybody was so happy in that picture. So the thing could only be filmed at 6 or 7 o'clock on a Sunday night. It was the only time the guy could get there to film it. So I started saying, well, some of our Sunday nights are pretty dead. How are we going to do this? So I walk up and down Main Street to each of the business guys there, and I say, if you're free Sunday night at 6, food and drink is on us. And they're cutting into the thickest steaks we have. This and that. Oh, it's wonderful. It all came out really well. We haven't seen many of those merchants since. We should have one of those days. And just the last would be just a little advertisement for we've had a blues festival there the first weekend in August. This will be our 12th. So if you're interested in coming, this is the headliner, Kenny Neal, wonderful guy, first two nights. And we put the bands on the veranda of the hotel, turn the garden into a little 4 tops, white tablecloth, dinner, 2 bands. It's always a great
Barbecue.
and a good barbecue dinner. So I will take my round of applause now. Thank you. Thank you. Any questions? That's what teachers are supposed to say.
Well, in 1962, what was it when they put it up for sale?
It had basically been through several iterations as a boarding house, as a place for transient workers, and perhaps there was some activity in those squeaky springs, commercial activity in those squeaky strings, I don't know. But, you know, it had come to the point where it had come to the point, there's talking in the classroom, I think.
Yeah, what? It's over, right? You said finally at one point.
She's been waiting for it to be. It's almost, it was almost red tagged, you know, the county is saying, you know, this is kind of getting bad, and that's why, you know, Lynn struck up the owner was down in Encino, Southern California, and she didn't really want to sell it, but then they struck up a relationship, and then the county added some pressure, and I think the redevelopment and all that, we're going to red tag this thing if you don't, to get it off the market. And the story we heard a few years ago from the fire chief in the North Shore Fire District that he had already talked to the county that if they were going to knock it down, don't do it just yet. We want to use it to practice on.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Would you review again where the old growth redwood sighting came from?
Well, I think from up to Mendocino National Forest. You know, there were apparently 10 to 12 of those kind of sawmills spread around the forest, and you can still see the saw marks, because just picture the roads in and out of here with horses. You're not going to haul the lumber out, you're going to mill it here and sell the lumber. And this is the same problem Lake County has always had with transportation. You grow things here, you want, like the green bean business was big in Upper Lake. Well, you're better off to process the fruit and vegetables here than hauling the produce out. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.